First, I'd like to thank Chairman Porter and Acting Chair Garcia and Ranking Member Moore for putting this hearing on today. Also, thank you to all the witnesses for joining us and for your testimony on this important issue. We've heard a lot of testimony today about how Big Pharma is responsible for the opioid crisis and rampant drug addiction in the United States. While these pharmaceutical companies may share some of the blame, we cannot ignore the issue of our porous southern border and raging border crisis. Joe Biden's failed immigration policy has empowered Mexican cartels to smuggle fentanyl and drugs across the southern border undeterred, killing over 100,000 Americans last year alone. Make no mistake, the border and immigration crisis in our nation is at the worst point that we've ever seen. I met with my state's Attorney General for the last 2 weeks, and he said that 100% of the fentanyl and methamphetamine entering Montana is coming across the southern border. In fiscal 21, 11,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized by CBP, enough to give a legal dose to every American. And this year alone, 173 pounds has been confiscated at the border. Unfortunately, tribal communities do often face the brunt of this burden in the fight against opioids and addiction. Mr. Del Cueto, thank you so much for joining us again today. It's always good to be with you. Thank you for securing our southern border. Do you think that this will help tribal communities and American communities by reducing the prevalence of fentanyl and drugs securing our southern border?
It most definitely will. We've seen it before that, different policies are enacted. The cartels, they try to get a different way to bring their product across where agents are able to interdict it. And right now, as I stated earlier, it is a free-for-all. Getting rid of Title 42 authority is handing over the key to the drug cartels.
Do you get any feedback from the attorney generals around our nation on what kind of time frame it takes from these drugs to enter our country until they are being distributed around the entire nation?
No, I haven't gotten that feedback from them. I don't know, maybe the individuals that run the agency, they may have gotten some type of feedback. I haven't. All I can testify to is I see the amount of drugs that are coming through. You see the issues that are happening throughout the country. You see it in the news. And, the drug cartels, they're aware of policies that are enacted in the U.S. and they use whatever they can to bring their drugs across. Right now, it happens to be, the catching and releasing of individuals and distracting agents from one area to the other with a huge volume of people that they bring across.
Unfortunately, I have spoke with the Attorney General about this issue, and apparently the cartels are operating with the efficiency of UPS, and it takes approximately 48 hours for those drugs to cross the southern border before they are distributed around Montana. Are there reasonable estimations of the amount of fentanyl that came across the southern border that was not seized?
There is, and I know that's not a good answer, but I will tell you what often happens is the way you track the gotaways. One, it could be used with sensor, it could be used with cameras, but oftentimes the drug cartels are aware where some of these things are, so they'll go through different areas. So it could be as rudimentary as just counting footprints in the sand. So it is a guesstimate on the number of gotaways, and it would be a complete guesstimate on the amount of drugs that are coming through. However, when you see that the price of fentanyl, the price of heroin, the price of meth is still cheap in America, that is because there's a huge supply coming through.
What are the relationships that CBP have with the tribal law enforcement, and what can be done to improve those to try and get some kind of collaboration in the law enforcement efforts to reduce this fentanyl problem?
It comes down to, obviously you're dealing with federal lands, but when agents arrest some of these individuals that are bringing drugs into the country, if it would fail to meet any prosecution guideline within the federal government, that the local tribal land might be able to take over the case.
Very good. And as the conditions continue to deteriorate as we speak, what would you take as your main priority message to this body?
We need to enact policies or bring back policies that were under effect before that lowers the amount of individuals coming across, that there's actually consequences for them. And as always, if anybody wants to come down here, I know you and several other congressmen have taken me up on the offer, and they've come down here and they've seen the reality. When you come down here and you see the reality of what's happening and how those gaps have been made under the current administration, perhaps individuals will see the difference.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chair, I would yield back.